we have several folks that have had some family emergencies and some other things going on that can't get on tonight. So we want to make sure that they can participate by watching and catching up later. So hope everyone's doing well. Several of you, I did get to see you at prayer conference last weekend in Winchester. And all except the one person that's on the call that's from Winchester who was sick and had babies that were sick, I understand. So Carrie gets a pass for not being able to be there, but we had a great weekend. And just a couple things that I want to remind you all of. And if you are not the lead youth leader at your church, if you would do me a favor and just remind your head youth leader about these upcoming events, that would help me out a lot. We have camp meeting is coming up in June. And why is that important to us? First of all, it's June 20th through the 23rd. It's going to be in Roanoke at Celebration Church. And Friday night, we are going to have special singing by the statewide youth choir. So if you have some young people that want to sing, we're going to be posting the links soon on the 2 songs that we're doing. There will be one original song and then one that everybody knows. Zach Kemp is actually writing a song to go with the theme of camp meeting. And so our young people are going to perform that song before the speaker speaks on Friday. So if you can get some young people there, that would really, it'd be really nice. Also, want to let everybody know, as far as youth events coming up, Teen Talent is on March 25th. Please, if you have some entries, those entries are due Monday, this coming up Monday. And so please get all those registrations in so that your young people, that's teens and kids, both, it's teen and junior talent, and so they can be a part of that. Girls Jamboree, our Girls Day is going to be May 6th, and that is for little girls as well as older girls. We're going to have a track for the kids as well as a track for the teen girls, and that's going to be at the campground. All the information is on our website. You can find that there. June 3rd, if you're needing some form of entertainment, I'm going to be running in a 5K. I use the term run very loosely. I will be moving in a 5K. So, and I invite all of you to join me. This is what we are doing for our Orphan Run for Hope. It's a way to raise funds for orphans around the world. And $240 raised feeds an orphan for a year. So my goal is to feed 2 orphans for this next year. So if you do the math, my goal is $480. If you are not going to run and you don't want to participate, you can participate with your wallet, and you can sponsor me if you want. So anyway, that's on June 3rd, and that's at the campground as well. There's a 5K and an adventure run. So if you don't want to run on the road, you can run up the mountain behind the campground and run back down. And and then the last thing to remind everybody about is that we have youth camp coming up. We're really excited about that. I spent today really focusing on camp, working on nurses, lifeguards, and kitchen staff. Those are 3 really big portions of camp. We can't run camp without those, and so we were working on those today. So those are upcoming. The first 3 weeks in July will be camp, and you're not going to want to miss that. Just as a reminder, something that we are doing different this year with youth camp is instead of ages, we're doing grades. So that's how it will be determined which camp the kids will go to. So first week is high school. That's 9 through 12. And if you have a student that is in 8th grade, they've just graduated 8th grade and they're going into 9th grade, they get to pick which camp they want to go to, whether it's high school or middle school. We're doing the same thing for those graduating 5th grade, going into 6th grade. They get to pick whether they go to elementary camp or middle school camp. And if they want to and want to pay for it, they can go to both. So that's exciting for those. The last thing that we're doing, we're just clarifying this, is we are allowing this year, we are allowing graduating seniors can come to camp one more year as a camper. If they are graduating in May and June, they can come to camp as a camper. So a couple of changes there, but we're excited about camp and how that's going to play out. And as a reminder, we are doing our special needs camp the Friday before camp starts. So that's on June 30th. We're doing a special needs camp. It's totally free. We just need people to register for it so we have enough food ready for them. And it's going to be on the campground. There's going to be elements of our camp throughout the day. So those students who normally could not enjoy camp as we do camp, we are allowing them to get involved and have a camp of their own. And giving parents of students with special needs an opportunity to rest. We'll have like a little lounge for the parents. If they trust us with their kids, they can drop them off with us, go to the lounge, hang out, take a breather, and just recharge their batteries. So we're excited. That's something new that we're beginning this year, and we are seeing a lot of positive response for our special needs camp. So help us promote that if you would. If you see that stuff on social media, would you share it for us and help us get the word out? What did I hear that you're not connected to our social media accounts? Make sure you go and connect on Facebook. That's where all of us old heads are. Instagram and Twitter. Go look us up. We have a state office page, and we have a youth and discipleship page. Okay. If you don't know where to find those, I share everything on my personal Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and you can go there and connect that way as well. All right. So everybody take a deep breath. We've got all the commercials out of the way. How was your first month in the youth ministry certification program? Let me hear from you. Just unmute yourself and jump in. It's amazing.
I'll start.
All right.
I jumped in reading the first book as my first book, Sticky Faith. And let me tell you, after years of doing both children's church, youth group, the statistics quoted in that book were really surprising. How many of our kids don't stick with their faith once they graduate and leave high school? I found myself, as I read that book through the month, like questioning, some of the things that I've done, some of the things we're currently doing, some of the things we used to do that we've gotten away from. And now I'm going, well, should we rethink some of that? But it really gave me a lot to think about in looking at youth and where they are today and what their real needs are. To hear or read statements from young people who have graduated and are now adults, them looking back on their youth group experiences was eye-opening to see some of the things that we think are important turned out to really not even be important to the kids. They really are more into relationship than we think they are. It was very eye-opening. So I liked it. Can't wait to get to the next one.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a great book to start out in. It's kind of middle of the road as far as difficulty and interest level. And I can't remember. I've read so many books through the years, and it's been a while since I read that one. So I don't know. I can't remember if this analogy that I'm going to use is in that book or not. But if it's not, it's still a good analogy. One of the things that I struggled with when I was a youth pastor was trying to get the students connected to other things in the church besides the youth group. If the youth group is the only thing that's keeping your students in church, then all it's going to take is an incident within the youth group to have them leave the church, whether that's a relationship that they're in. I hated the kids dating in my youth group because there's always drama with that. And if they break up, then one of them's going to leave, and then you have to deal with that and all of that. And so one of the things that someone talked to me about was, imagine that this is your student, okay? And imagine that there is a single point in the middle of them that is connecting them to a ministry, or that's connecting them to the Lord, okay? And that string between them and the Lord is youth group. If at any point that relationship of the youth group or something happens in the youth group is severed, then you lose that student. There's nothing left to connect them to the Lord. So it's our goal to look for other points of interest to get them connected to the Lord, whether that's another ministry in the church, whether that's a ministry or a relationship at school, but trying to get as many points connected to your student and the Lord makes it so that if any of those strings are severed, any of those points are severed, they're not going to go anywhere. And, because as a youth pastor, I always wanted to be the one that fixed everything. Like if there was a kid that had a problem, I can fix it. If they were struggling with something, I want to help them, but I realized that I'm not Jesus. I'm not the Savior. And so I have to be the connecting point to them and the Savior. And so we have to really try to do that. And as my girls were growing up, my daughters were growing up, and they were in youth groups, I had to be okay with them making relationships with other adults that would connect them to the Lord. Because, if anything ever happened to different relationships, I wanted them to still be connected. And I think that's a lot of what that sticky faith talks about too. Somebody else.
I'm actually reading Sticky Faith as my second. Oh.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm reading Sticky Faith as my second book. I'm about halfway through. I don't know how much through, but it did talk about that, connecting them in other ministries. And it actually said that the best scenario is if they're a part of worship, that they found that was the best connection, I guess, like you were saying, for the sticky faith. And I just was like thinking, and I don't know, Carol, just like you, I mean, both the books I've been reading make you think. Obviously, I think that's the point of us reading these books, but it makes you look at, well, where is your youth group measuring up, and where are they falling into these other things that they're talking about? But our youth, all of them actually are in our worship service, our adult worship. They are part of it. And then they have their own, it's called our church is Victory Church of God. So they have what's called Junior Victory worship team, and they lead worship once a month. So it's it was nice to think about that, because I didn't, even though I knew that they were on the worship team, I never understood that significance of how that could be beneficial to the, their founding faith, I guess, and keeping them connected and stuff. So that was good. Yeah, that was it.
Good, good. All right, somebody else.
My name is Chris Mathis with Freedom Fellowship in Virginia Beach. And the first book I read was Your First 2 Years in Youth Ministry by Doug Fields. And I really enjoyed a lot of that book. The chapter that stood out to me the most was probably, I think it was chapter 3, where he's talking about making sure that you're taking care of yourself and taking care of your heart, because I find that it's really easy for me to get so busy doing ministry that I don't spend the time that I need to spend abiding and just making sure that I'm where I need to be in my own personal relationship. I'm in kids ministry, so I do youth ministry within a co-op at our church. I teach chapel there, but so it's a little bit, it's not different, but it's a little bit more hectic, I would say, up there with them. But there's a lot of really good stuff in all of it, and just thinking about the ways that I'm reaching the kids, and kind of the other thing that Doug talked about was being good at saying no, and not giving all my yeses away. By the end of the day, I have no yeses left for the people in my family. So that kind of thing. And then I started reading because you had said, Josh, you had said that nuts and bolts was the hard one to get through. I made that my next one because I wanted to try to get it out of the way. But it's been actually pretty good so far. I read something in it tonight that said, basically along the lines that, are we chaperones or shepherds? And it reminded me that, what I don't want to be is a chaperone to the kids that I minister to. I definitely want to be shepherding them and just not getting caught up in that kind of situation. So it's been good so far. I've enjoyed everything that I've read.
Good. You'll hear me say this a lot throughout this course because I'm such a firm believer in it, that and Doug's comment there is so true when he said, that make sure that you're saving those yeses for the important people in your life. If we fail as husbands and as wives, if we fail as moms and dads, then we're going to fail as youth leaders. You can't be successful in youth ministry at the expense of your family. In fact, God's not called us to that. If that's what it costs you, then that's not your calling. Excuse me. Your first church is your family, and you can't lose them in order to gain your youth. And so that's a good thought there. I'm glad you brought that up from Doug's writing. Save those yeses. I wanted to make sure that we had enough time. I'm glad to hear that you guys are enjoying the reading. There will be some time when you may not. I hope that I'm wrong with that. I hope you enjoy all of the reading. It could just be that my ADD was really tipping out when I was going through reading all of these books. But another part of what we're doing is not just the books, but also the manual. So that is where we're going to spend most of our time tonight, is talking about some points from the manual. Tonight's assignment is we're going to be talking about the students. And if you have your manual, mine aren't numbered, but it starts looking like this. So there's 3 sections, and the first one is the students. And there are 3 articles that are written there. And this month's teaching from the manual. Really, there was a lot of book knowledge that was there. It wasn't a lot of experience writing from people. And so, the first article that was there, the first, I guess, chapter there was talking about the personality types. Have any of you ever done a personality test? Has your job made you go through that, or your church made you go through that? I've been through several leadership conferences, and depending on who's teaching it, they each recommend different ones. So I have done some. I've done the Myers-Briggs, which you can do that. I think those are free. You can do those online. So if you've never done a personality test, you should take one and find out what your personality type is. They usually don't take that long, but it's important to know. It really helps in your learning, in the way that when you know how you receive things better, it helps in your learning process, but it also helps you in communicating with other individuals. Like I said, there's the Myers-Briggs, or the other one is if you ever had a DISC profile, where it talks about the 4 different personality types. And if you've ever done a DISC profile, I'm a high I. So if you've ever done one, you'll know what that means. That typically means that I am I'm a chatty chat when I'm in a conversation with people, when I'm in a group. And that does, as you guys can see, I do most of the talking on this Zoom, but that's my personality. And I can't stand silence. Like, I don't know if anybody else struggles with that, but like silence, like, especially when you're in and amongst people, I will say things that are ridiculous in groups if it ever gets to that point where there's that awkward silence. Like right now. See how painful that was? It was
Like right now.
absolutely painful. And some of you were like, did he just freeze up? Like, did his internet connection go out? Oh, it drives me crazy, okay? But when you understand different personalities, then it helps you communicate with those type of with those students. When you know what kind of personality your students are, then when you're teaching or when you're just connecting with them one-on-one, it can, when you know what they're like, it can help you talk with them. And so I love what Janet Blair, I love how that she breaks down and gives us a lot of information about the 4 personality types that she talks about. And so they were sanguine, choleric, which I thought that's what babies have. But and then melancholy and phlegmatic, which is what happens when I get the flu. And so, but each one of those temperaments has its own set of personality traits. When you guys were reading this, what did you find anything interesting about this, or did you find that could you identify with one of those 4?
This is Deshani out in Virginia Beach. I identify as a golden retriever. I tend to be pretty even-keeled for the most part. I really like how she broke it down into the different animals. It's really interesting in terms of personality quizzes. I have taken the Enneagram. I know there are some churches who use that in their congregations. But on the DISC profile, I believe I'm an SC.
Okay. Now, I will tell you, I wouldn't be doing my my job as an official in the state office. There are some churches that do use the Enneagrams, but there are some that are vehemently opposed to it as well. So,
And I agree. I mean, you know, personally, when my company, we took the Enneagram as part of our corporate test. And for me, it's a little bit too new agey for me. So I did kind of feel something in my spirit taking that test. So for me, it's not something that I really relate it to, but I definitely relate more to the Myers-Briggs or the disc profile test.
good. I'm glad that you're knowing what I'm saying whenever I mention that. That's good. Then. Anybody else?
I'll go. Matt Fields, I'm definitely the choleric. I think this says it pretty well. And I did a lot of highlighting, but I like how it said God purposely made each one of us different from the other. And our differences make us part of the whole body. I think that God made me much different than the people that I work with and that I'm associated with. And I think that also allows me to reach out to people that they typically can't reach out to, and reach out to kids' parents of kids in a harder situation, and their parents would typically talk to someone maybe suit wearing or so forth.
Sure. That's good. All right. Could you see that if you have an understanding of those temperaments, if you understand those, could you see how you could utilize that to minister to young people? Did any of you, as you were reading this, did you associate certain young people in your ministry with those personality types and those temperaments?
Absolutely.
Listen, I know a pastor who made his entire staff take the DISC profile assessment. And if you know how the DISC works, you know that each one of the letters has a color as well that goes with it. So like the I's are yellow, I think the D's are red, there's green and blue, I think. But anyway, what you know, what he did is with each staff person, they put a nameplate on their office door that was the color of their personality, so that whoever was going into their office, they knew what type of personality they were getting ready to meet with. It helped in their communicating skills. He took it a step further. I think this is really extreme, but how many of you know that when your pastor asks you to do something, you just do it, whether you agree with it or not? So the pastor actually had everybody color code their names on his phone, so that whenever they would call, the phone would light up that color as well. The background would be that color, so that he would know, okay, Sarah's calling and she is a C. So I know this when I'm talking to her, you know. So I don't know if you got to go that far with it, but I think just knowing the type of personalities that are in your youth group can really help you. Not only you're communicating with them, but it also can help you connect them with other young people that are their like temperament or have a complementing temperament. And I know that probably most of you are like, man, I just kind of felt like I was kind of just a babysitter with youth group. I didn't know I had to do psychology too. But I think anything that we can do to better ourselves in reaching our young people can only help them and us. So does anybody have anything else they want to add to that article by Janet Blair? All right. There's that silence again. Do you know that they say that there is a lull in conversations every 7 minutes? That's true. I've timed it before. It's rough. So the second article was by Bill Isaacs. Bill Isaacs was a longtime youth director. Then he was an overseer for the Church of God, and now he is a senior pastor in Ohio. Bill was my youth director when I first got into youth ministry in Tennessee. But this article just made me laugh because it talked about the stages of adolescent development. How many of you know that that is a pure definition of being a teenager? That there is a lot of developing that's going on. There's voice changes in young men and they get embarrassed whenever their voice is changing and it cracks while they're talking. And then with our young ladies, sometimes it happens earlier than being a teenager, but a lot of times they're going through their hormonal and starting their period and things like that. And what happens during that, there could be embarrassment, there could be just them trying to figure out how to navigate through that. I know one of the things that this past week I've been working on editing and finalizing our camp manual. So those of you that are going to work camp, this is another plug for camp. We need you to work camp. We need volunteers, okay? When you do work camp, you'll get a camp manual ahead of time that you can look and read over it. And one of the things that I added to it was for our cabin leaders, those that are going to be taking care of, especially our teenagers, that one of the things that we're asking the female head cabin leaders is to have a conversation with their young ladies in their room on the proper disposal of certain hygiene products. Sometimes they don't come from homes that teach them how to do that. And so we had to put that in the manual. On the other side of that, having to tell the cabin leaders for the boys, please talk to your boys about wearing deodorant. You wouldn't think that you would have to have this conversation. Those of you that have teenage boys in your home, you have to have that discussion. You have to look at them and say, you smell like sausage. Go wash your pits. Okay. It's terrible. Okay. And you have to remind these boys that going to the pool does not count for a shower. Okay. You still have to take a shower every day. Okay. So we have to put that in the manual. But there are physical changes which cause behavioral changes in our students. And that's probably one of the funniest things about student ministry is navigating through that part of their life. No other ministry really has to deal with that. Senior adult ministry, you don't have to have these type of discussions with the senior adults. If you do, it's probably time for them to go ahead and be put in the home. All right. But in youth ministry, we have to deal with these things. In children's ministry, you're probably most of the time not going to have to talk about this yet, except maybe in some of your older kids. But not only do they have physical changes, but they have those emotional changes as well. We have to be sympathetic to that. And one of the things that I'm noticing is that this generation of young people, they seem to carry, agree with me if you want to, or disagree, they seem to carry more emotional baggage than I did when I was a teenager or when I was a youth pastor. Something that I'm doing right now, we have a church that they recently lost their youth pastor. It's one of our churches in Roanoke. And their pastor asked me if I would be willing to come in on a few Wednesday nights during the transition and take care of their young people. Well, it's been 10 years since I have regularly taught the same group of students. And you know what I realized is that I'm out of practice. And even last night while I taught, I mean, I prepared, I thought this is going to be the bomb message right here. I mean, the kids are going to be on their face before the Lord, and like their parents are going to have to come peel them off of the floor. It's going to wreck them. Okay. And I said something, I couldn't even tell you what I said, but it got them tickled. They started laughing and I lost them. Completely lost the group, completely lost the vibe of the room, and I couldn't get them back. And I was like, how did I lose these kids? You know, things have changed in a decade. The delivery method for messages, the subject matter, the things that I used to talk about, they don't care about now. Okay. And having to communicate with them on a different level is something that even now I'm having to work really hard to achieve. And one of the things that I'm noticing is the whole emotional aspect. Anxiety was not a thing when I was a teenager, or even when I was a youth pastor. You know, I grew up in a time that if you got your feelings hurt, they just tell you, go rub some dirt on it and get back out there, you know? And so I'd be interested to hear from you guys. Where are your students at emotionally? Do you find that there's more, that they're dealing more with anxiety? I think the word that I heard a lot of youth pastors use, and this is just us talking, hopefully you don't have any students in your house that are listening, but the word that I'm hearing is that our young people are just soft. Are you finding that to be true? Let me hear from you.
I don't think I don't think my group is per se soft, but I do have a few boys and they're close. And I remember one time we were meeting and they got the giggles. And I was like that. So I understand that. So I was just like, it's okay, just get it out. Because they were trying to like hold it in and, compose themselves. And I was like, it's okay, just get it out. And, I let them get it out and then we just moved on, So I have found kind of meeting them where they're at is helpful. Not that I let disruption happen, and they're not like that, but understanding, especially something like the giggles, because I dealt with that when I was younger. Like, you can't help it, and the more you try to not, then the more you're gonna laugh. And so I think just trying to meet them on their level, but also bringing it back, I've found it helpful. And like one of the boys, when he was going through the voice change, like we do our memory verses each week in front of the whole church, and like he wouldn't come do that, and there were things, and so I would just kind of like come alongside and just say, oh, it's okay, we all, they all went through that, all the guys are going to do it, and just trying to relate and accept them, I think, where they're at, but also pulling them up, I guess. So, but I don't think ours are too soft. I don't know.
Well, and let me say this, because I don't think this is what you meant, but as you were saying that, I got to thinking maybe that didn't come across like I wanted it to. When I say soft, that is not in reference to their sexuality at all, or if they're effeminate or anything like that. It has more to do with my style, my delivery style is, many times I've had young people that they like to heckle while you're trying to teach and make comments. And my style is to give it back to them. And then what I'm noticing now is that a lot of the students are like, well, you hurt my feelings. I didn't like that you did that. And, you know, I'm used to, well, if that's how you're going to give it, I'm going to give it to you back. And I'm noticing that you can't do that a lot of times, that you have to redirect in a different way, and they can't handle the harsher redirection that we used to be able to use, if that makes sense. Somebody else, what are your experiences in when you're teaching your young people?
So I deal, well, I work in or serve in several of the youth ministry programs. I do everything from nursery to high school. So I have found that with the middle school and high school, girls primarily, that they do carry around a lot of anxiety and almost like embarrassment when you do try to call them out on certain things or approach them in a certain way. So that is different dealing with that. But at the same time, for me, I dealt with that most of my middle school and high school. And I really, it goes back to kind of the first, that Janet Blair article that she had written about how we have to have an understanding of ourselves so that we can understand the actions of others. So going through carrying a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression and a lot of issues with like my personal self-esteem, I think has helped to relate to the youth in our group better.
That's good.
I guess I'll go. Seems like most of the kids that I teach, not that I don't know how to say it without being rude, but almost like they're our generation maybe failed some of the kids in the sense of a lot of them more than I ever remember growing up are dealing with a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety. Some are I'm dealing with a lot more abused children than I'm used to dealing with. A lot of situations that you didn't hear a lot about when we were growing up. And I don't think it's made them soft, but it does make them touchy. It does make you have to second guess pretty much every way you respond to them because you don't want to hurt their feelings and you don't want them to say or do something to make them not return to church, especially. So I do think that there are a lot of issues that we didn't have growing up.
I think that's good. I think that a lot of us, I know for me, it has made me be more sensitive to things that they're dealing with and struggling with. It's also made me be more careful with how the things that I say. One of the things that I'm noticing too, it's one of the reasons why we're doing the special needs camp is we're finding that on the surface you'll be talking with some students that are on the spectrum, but you don't even realize they're on the spectrum until you start talking to them more and more, and you're realizing, oh, okay, so that affects how your relationship with them is and how you communicate with them when you have that understanding that, okay, they're going to take things differently than you mean them. And so you have to really focus on how you deliver some things when you realize that you have students that are on the spectrum. And we're seeing more and more students. I don't know why. I'm sure there are studies that are telling us why this is happening, but we're seeing more and more students that are on the autism spectrum And so we have to be more sensitive to that. Because as we all know, the Lord loves them just as much as he does a person that's not on the spectrum. And he made them that way. He made them to have those special needs. And we're called to meet those just like we are to students that don't have those things going on in their lives. So.
I also think one of the things that we're seeing, especially at Freedom, is an influx of young people into our youth group. Most of them are middle school, who didn't come through our children's church. So they're coming. They don't have the same foundation, so they are less connected to the group. And one of the things that we are having to focus on, and I read that in the Sticky Faith as well, they don't trust us. There's 8 leaders in that room, but they don't have a special connection with any of us yet to where they trust us. So until they trust us, they barely respect us. So therefore they bring their own energy into that room. And, we have to gently keep them in line, and gently, because again, you don't want to, like the gentleman said earlier, you don't want them to leave. You want them there. You want them to continue to be a part. So having one of the things I gathered from the Sticky Faith book is that part of that is separating them and having one-on-one conversations with them. I did that last night. I from across the room, just noticed a young man. First of all, he wasn't hanging with his friends. He's just kind of by himself, kind of loaning it that night, and that's not like him. And so I call him over, and originally, he just looks at me and he goes, "Yeah, nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong." And then after he stood beside me for a few minutes and we're in the middle of worship, he said, "Yep, got in a fight today, probably going to get kicked out of school." So it was that moment I realized now he's starting to trust me, because that's what I want. Regardless of what he says, I just want him to know we're there. We're not there to judge. We're not there to tell them or decide for them what's good or bad, because I want them to come and to learn, and through relationship with Christ, come to that understanding on their own. So it is different. I mentioned that before, that some of the kids I'm ministering to now, I minister to their parents, and they are not their parents. they are not. So there is a difference in them, and I don't know that it's soft-ish, but I think they're more emotionally maybe raw than kids used to be. So yeah, there's a different dealing with them, and part of it's, like you said, it's just understanding it, and almost knowing, well, this kid you can say this to, but this one you probably shouldn't. I have that just within the same family of kids. One child in that family is just very outgoing, very upfront, lively, has lots of friends, but then the very next child underneath them is just quiet, withdrawn, doesn't feel they fit, and struggles to make a connection. They come the same, both show up in the same group and have a totally different experience every single week. One goes, "Oh, this was great, this was fun." The other one's like, "Oh my God, it was games, I hated it." So it's like having that mix, to make sure that everybody finds something that ministers to them and reaches them. It's more of a challenge now than it used to be, I think.
Doesn't it make you more sensitive to, or understanding, maybe would be a better word, to what your pastor goes through in his delivery?
Oh yeah.
It's on a bigger scale that, his delivery or her delivery is, they don't reach everybody the same. And so they have to do things differently each week. And we as ministers to young people have to do the same thing. And even last night, I felt completely like I told you, I had lost the group. The senior pastor is in the room, and here I am, I'm the state youth director. I should be able to handle anything that's thrown my way. And I'm trying to deal with these students. And we gave a call to for salvation at the end, and had them pray that. And I just asked them at the end. I said, if you prayed that prayer today, I'm going to be here for probably another half hour. You'll just walk by me and just let me know that you prayed that prayer, just so that I know, so I can just know. And I thought, nobody's coming up here. Nobody's going to say a word to me. I mean, they didn't get anything out of this. And this young man who was on his phone the entire time, even though I asked him to put the phone away, he told me he was tweeting my message. And so he's on his phone the whole time. And as he's leaving, he looked at me and he says, "Hey, I prayed that." And he walked out. He just let me know, and I was like, okay, Lord, that's it. If it was for nobody but that one. And he would have been the least one that I would have thought would have got it, last night. But anyway, that leads me to the last section that was in your manual for this month, and that is counseling. I'm not going to go into a lot of this because this material is dated. If you haven't noticed that, it's at least 10 years old, and we're working on updating it. There's some really good stuff in it, but the thing about this particular chapter is that I kind of felt like that they were giving you permission to counsel young people. I don't know if you guys felt that as well, because they gave you pointers on how to counsel them. Let me caution you. Let me caution all of us as youth leaders. If you're not a licensed counselor, you can't counsel. Period. You can give advice and you can help them emotionally, but you can't counsel them on a regular basis. You will be opening yourself up to all kinds of liability if you are not a licensed counselor. One of the changes that all of us youth directors made a couple years ago, if you remember, how many of you grew up, just by a show of hands, how many of you grew up going to youth camp? Anybody go to youth camp growing up? Okay. So we used the phrase counselors at youth camp. Okay. That was a term that was used for years. Somebody that was in charge of the kids in the cabins, they were called counselors. Well, we had to make the transition to move from counselors to cabin leaders. And we did that for legal purposes, because we can't call ourselves counselors if we are not a licensed counselor. So be very careful. There was some good information that's in this section, and I'm not telling you to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but be careful as you are talking with students. Make sure, if at all possible, that when you're talking with them, if things start to get heavy, you need to have somebody else in on that conversation with you. There are certain things, if you work with young people, anyone under the age of 18, and they share certain things with you, you are a mandated reporter. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. If they reveal to you that there's been any kind of abuse, you are, by law, you have to report that. You can do that anonymously, but you do have to report that. And so be careful what you open yourselves up to. Sometimes we all have these in our youth group. Sometimes you have oversharers. Those young people that are in your youth group, the ones that tell you everything, the ones that tell you family secrets that you didn't want to know about. And now you can't look at the mom the same way as you used to because of what their kid told you, And so we all have those. And so just be careful. What are you guys' thoughts on on that last section. Anybody have anything to add?
I guess I'll go.
I would like to know. Oh, sorry. I would like to know kind of how do you distinguish counseling versus like mentoring and even what you were saying, give advice. And so how do you know if you've crossed into counseling?
I think the number one thing is frequency. How often is that happening? Okay. Counseling is something that you do on a regular basis. So I think frequency is one and subject matter is the other. What are the things that you're telling them? You know, what are the things they're needing advice on? Your radar should go off if you're crossing over into the area that they've moved beyond your expertise. Does that make sense? All right, Matthew, you were going to say something.
No, I agree that anytime you're speaking with another student, you should have somebody with you. And just another plug for camp. I know that people were talking about, or I was talking about earlier about earning trust, or she was talking about earning trust. I do think that, for instance, I went to let people know or let my kids know that I can be trusted. And the first way to do that was to have fun with them. So that's why I agreed to go to camp with them last year and show them that it's not all serious, that you can play games with them and let them view you as a person instead of just a leader. That's it.
Okay, that's good. I hope I didn't scare anybody with that comment about on this section, but it's something that's so important. And I've seen leaders that have crossed the line. They didn't intend to cross the line, and they did. And once you cross that, it is so hard to go back. And so you have to make sure that you don't put yourself in a situation. I think the Bible, I know the Bible says to not let your good be spoken evil of. And that's so important, to make sure that no one can accuse you. And one way that you don't get accused is that you don't put yourself in those situations. So, even at prayer conference last weekend, there was a moment when the speaker asked for the leadership of the state to come up to the stage, and then they had folks in the crowd come and be prayed for. There was a lady that no one had prayed for, and I made sure that I grabbed my wife's hand, and we went together to pray for this lady. And I know that is, I know that's male-female relationship, but we live in a world now where you have to be cautious even with same gender relationships. There was a time when where I would meet with teenage boys that, they didn't have a dad. And so they would come hang out with me at the church. And, I would have never thought in a million years to have a female come and hang out with me at the church. Well, nowadays you can't even do that with the same gender. You have to be cautious. And I think that if we're overly conscious about those things, I think that the Lord protects us. And, because the last thing you want to do is be afraid to be a minister. That's the worst place to be, when you feel like you can't be there for your students. All right. Well, we are right at that mark. I've told you from the beginning, I try to keep us at an hour. And so I want to keep you up with that. I will tell you that the next month's assignment is the section called the youth leader. Okay, so that's in your manual. You'll read that section, digest it, be ready for discussion so that we don't have any awkward silences. And then you will need to have your next book. Many of you are already way ahead of schedule. I got somebody's 4th book report today. And so go ahead and read your next book. Again, those books are listed in your manual up towards the front. And so you can get those and get your reading done and your reports done. We're keeping track of that. Ashley's my administrative assistant, and she's keeping up with all of those reports as you are doing them. One of the cool things that we started, we're going to be starting in March, is that we're doing a Kids Men certification. So if you haven't been on social media, you might not have seen that. But we've had probably about 20 people that have signed up to be a part of that. So that's going to be the kids ministry side of what we're doing right now. And we're excited about offering that as well. So those are your assignments for the next month. We're going to look, if you've got your calendars out, we are, we're going to do March 23rd. It's another Thursday, March 23rd at 7:00 again. If you can make it, that's great. If for some reason you have to miss it, you're just going to miss out on being able to contribute, just like we did today. You're going to miss out on the awkward silences. It's just not near as fun watching it in a recording. You got to be live to see me squirm. Okay. So does anybody have any questions about the program at all? All right. We're going to close in prayer. If you would, I have 2 requests that we're going to pray about. And if you guys have any, I'll be glad to pray for those as well. But one of our participants, I don't think she's here anymore. I think she had to go. Becca Oakley. Yeah, I don't see her on here right now. Her mother passed away, and so we need to remember her family, her and her family. And also, Matthew, help me with this name. Scott called me and told me he was on his way to the emergency room to meet with a student who was having, they think, appendicitis. And you're muted. Do you know his name?
Ethan.
Ethan, that's right. All right, thanks, Chance.
Thanks, Chance.
Ethan, what's that?
I said thanks, Chance. I was trying to get up here.
So that's why Scott couldn't be here. He was going to the emergency room to meet with that student. And my understanding is he gave his heart to the Lord a week ago yesterday. So that's awesome. It's in little moments like that we make the largest impact in our students. When you show up at the hospital and just to check on them. And I promise you that if I understood the story right, Ethan's parents don't go to church or don't go to your church. So could be a major impact on the family for Scott to show up and pray for Ethan. So does anybody else have any prayer requests? All right. Pray that we get more entries for Teen Talent. Right now, if we don't get any more, we're going to be done at 10 o'clock in the morning. So we need some more entries. All right. So let's pray, and then I'll let you guys go. God, we come before you today. We thank you. We love you. We honor you today. God, I ask that you would just bless everyone that is on this call and those that are listening later, Lord. God, bless the families that they represent and the churches and the communities that they represent, Lord. God, and I thank you for their faithfulness, and I ask that you would reward them for their faithfulness, not just to this program, Lord, but God, the faithfulness to the young people that you have trusted with them. We come to you and we lift up Becca and her family, Lord God, and the loss of her mom. We just ask that you would be with them and just remind them of your grace and be that comforter that we know that you are to them. We also lift up Ethan to you right now. We ask that you would send a healing touch to his body. We ask that you'd guide and direct the doctors to figure out for sure what's wrong and to just handle that situation. God, I thank you. I give you praise. It's in your name. Amen. I enjoy our time together. Thank you guys so much for giving up an hour away from your families. Some of you, your families joined you on the call. We saw them, and just always good to see them. And if there's anything I can do for you, don't hesitate to reach out. And what you do is important. It matters not only to you and your family, but it matters to the young people under your care, and it matters to those in your church. I appreciate you. Please volunteer for camp. vacog.org/youth camp. Go and fill out the application today. All right. Talk to you guys later.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thank you.